The night was cold and the wind cut through the empty streets like sharp knives. A single traveler walked slowly, his boots heavy with dust from long roads. He was human, tired and alone, carrying nothing but a small bag on his shoulder. His face was pale and his eyes searched for a place with light, warmth, and rest. At the corner of the street stood a café. It was small, glowing with a soft blue light that seemed alive. The sign above the door flickered in an unknown language, but somehow he felt it called to him. He pushed the door, and a low chime rang through the air, not like metal, but like a living voice. Inside, the café was empty. Chairs stood neatly in their places and the air smelled of warm spices. Strange symbols moved slowly across the walls, glowing and fading like they were breathing. He felt uneasy, but the warmth inside made him stay. Behind the counter, a woman stood. Her skin shimmered like moonlight, soft and silver. Her eyes were deep, endless, carrying sorrow and secrets. She looked at him without surprise, as if she had been waiting. "For a warm drink, I can take care of you behind the counter," she whispered. Her voice was gentle but heavy, like it carried weight from another world. The human froze, unsure if he had heard her right. Why would she say such words to a stranger in an empty cafe at night? He stepped closer, his breath slow. The counter between them felt like a thin wall between two different lives. "I just need warmth," he said, his voice weak. She nodded, her long fingers moving across cups that looked like crystal shells. Steam rose from the drink she poured. It glowed faintly, not like any drink he had ever seen. The smell was sweet, but carried something unknown. When she pushed the cup toward him, their eyes met and he felt a strange pull inside his chest. "Drink," she whispered. "It will keep you safe." Safe from what, he wondered. The words made him both comforted and afraid. He held the cup, his hands shaking. The first sip burned and cooled at the same time. It spread warmth through his body, but also something else. He felt memories that were not his own. He saw images of stars, battles, and a face that looked like his but was not. He gasped, dropping the cup slightly, though not spilling it. What is this?" he asked. Her eyes lowered, and for a moment she looked fragile. "It is a part of me," she said. "You needed strength and I needed someone to remember." The cafe felt quieter than before. The walls seemed to lean closer, listening. The human looked around and felt as if the cafe itself was alive. Every chair, every shadow seemed to breathe with the woman's sorrow. He wanted to ask more, but then a sound broke the stillness. A heavy knock echoed on the glass window. The human turned, and his heart stopped. Figures stood outside, tall, armored, their faces hidden behind dark masks. The alien woman's face turned, pale, her hands tightening on the counter. "They are here too soon," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her body stood firm. She leaned forward and placed her hand over his. "You must trust me," she said. "Do not let them see you." Human felt his chest tighten. Who were these strangers outside and why were they searching for him? He had been running for so long, but he had not told anyone where he would go. How did they find him here, in this small, glowing cafe? The knock came again, louder, like a demand. The window rattled, and the light inside the cafe flickered. The woman's eyes darkened with fear, but also with decision. She pulled him gently toward the space behind the counter. "Stay low, stay silent," she ordered as he crouched behind the counter. He heard the door begin to creak. The sound of metal and voices outside grew sharper. His heart beat like a drum inside his chest. He held the warm cup tight as if it was his only shield. From where he hid, he could see only her back. The alien woman stood straight, calm, but ready. She whispered words in her strange language, and the cafe lights shifted like waves. The human did not understand, but he felt the cafe respond to her voice. The air thickened, the walls hummed, the door rattled harder. Shadows moved outside, pressing closer. The woman turned slightly, her silver hair glowing. "Do not fear," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "For tonight I will protect you." The cafe trembled, the lights dimmed. and the sound outside grew sharper. The human closed his eyes, his hands tight on the cup. He did not know if he had walked into safety or into a trap, but one thing was certain. The woman behind the counter was no ordinary stranger, and outside the hunters were waiting. The cafe was silent, but silence had weight inside its walls. The human crouched behind the counter, clutching the glowing cup. Outside, the shadowy figures stood in the cold night, their armor reflecting faint light. He could hear their heavy breathing through metal masks like beasts chained by steel. The alien woman did not move at first. She stood tall, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim cafe light. Her eyes stared at the door as if she could see through it. The human felt the strange warmth of the drink spread through him. It was not like ordinary warmth, it was alive, crawling. Through his veins, whispering voices, he tried to push the cup away, but the warmth held him. Suddenly images flashed in his mind, too sharp to be dreams. He saw stars burning, ships exploding in silence, and faces screaming. He saw her, the woman behind the counter, holding someone who looked human but was not him. Her tears shimmered in the vision and her voice cried a name he did not know. The human gasped, his chest tight. It felt like drowning in memories that were not his own. When the vision faded, he was shaking. He looked up at her, whispering, "What did you put inside me?" Her head turned slowly, her sorrow deep. "I gave you a part of my memory," she said, "because without it, you would not survive." He wanted to speak, but the cafe suddenly trembled. The door rattled again, this time harder. The hunters outside slammed something against the glass. A deep voice growled words in a language he did not understand. The woman moved quickly, raising her hand. The walls of the cafe rippled like water, symbols glowing brighter. The human felt the floor shake beneath him, as if the cafe itself was alive. "What is this place?" he whispered. Her answer was simple but heavy. "It is my only safe ground," she said, "but it listens only to me." Her voice broke for a moment, then steadied. "And now it listens to you too." He held the cup tighter, its glow now dim. The hunters outside began to spread apart, their shadows slipping across the windows. He knew they were searching for another entrance. Fear crawled inside his bones, but so did something else, a strength that was not his own. His breathing slowed, his heart steadied. The drink was changing him. The alien woman stepped closer to him, her eyes sharp but gentle. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They know you carry something important." "Me?" he asked, voice cracking. "I have nothing, I am no one." Her gaze softened, yet her words were firm. "You are not no one. You are the reason I risked my life tonight." Before he could question her more, a loud crash shook. The cafe, a side window shattered, shards falling like deadly rain. One of the armored figures pushed halfway inside, its glowing weapon ready. The human ducked, heart pounding. But the alien woman moved like lightning. She whispered a word that burned the air and the cafe walls stretched, swallowing the intruder halfway. The figure struggled, screaming through its mask, then was thrown back into the night by the living wall. The cafe grew still again, but the human knew the hunters would not leave. His body trembled, not from fear alone, but from the strange power in his blood. He looked at the alien woman and whispered, "Why are they hunting me?" Her answer was slow, heavy with truth. "Because you are the last of him," she said, "the last shadow of the one I loved." The words cut him deeper than any blade. The visions in the drink now made sense. The face he saw, the one she had held in her arms, was not him, but someone who looked almost like him, her lost human, her past. And now, for reasons he did not understand, the hunters believed he carried that same legacy. The human's throat tightened. "I am not him," he said quickly. "I am just a traveler." Her eyes glimmered with both sadness and hope. "I know," she whispered. "But to them, it does not matter. They will never stop until you are gone." The café hummed around them, its walls breathing slowly. The hunter's footsteps echoed outside as they circled, planning their next strike. The human felt trapped, yet he also felt a strange bond forming. This woman, this café, even the cup in his hand, they had tied him to her fate. And no matter how much he wanted to run, he knew escape would not be simple. The alien woman leaned closer, her whisper soft but fierce. "Do not let go of the drink," she said. "It is not only warmth, it is your shield." The human nodded, his fear burning. Into determination, he was still confused, still weak. But he knew one thing. He could not leave her. Not when the hunters were at the door, and not when her sorrow felt tied to his very blood. The night outside grew darker. The hunters' shadows pressed against the glass like claws. The café, lights pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting, and behind the counter a fragile alliance had been born, one that would decide whether they both lived, or both vanished into silence. The night outside pressed harder against the glass. The hunters moved like shadows, their armor catching faint sparks of the café's strange blue glow. The human could hear their heavy steps circling the building, slow and patient, like predators. Closing in on prey, his fingers tightened around the glowing cup. Even though the drink inside had cooled, every breath he took felt borrowed, as if the walls themselves allowed him to exist. The alien woman stood firm, her silver skin shining faintly in the dim light. She placed one hand on the counter and the café seemed to breathe with her. Strange symbols lit up on the wooden surface, pulsing softly. Her eyes never left the windows, but her voice reached him like a whisper carried by wind. "They will not stop tonight," she said. "They came for you and they know you are here." The human's chest tightened. "I never asked for this," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't even know what they want from me." Her gaze turned toward him, calm but sharp. "They want what you carry," she answered, "and you do not even know it." The words cut deeper than the cold outside. What could he possibly carry that would call hunters across the night? Suddenly, the front door rattled, hard. Metal claws scratched against the glass, leaving marks that glowed faintly. The hunters were testing the defenses. The café groaned in reply, its walls shifting slightly as if alive. The human's heart pounded, sweat dripping down his back. He whispered, "Why protect me? Why risk yourself for me?" The woman's eyes darkened, filled with an old sorrow. "Because once I failed," she said, her voice breaking for only a moment. "Long ago I let a human die in my arms, and the stars have punished me every day since. Tonight, I will not fail again." Before he could answer, the window burst inward. Shards of glass scattered across the floor like sharp rain. A hunter stepped inside, taller than both of them, its armor black and thick, its mask glowing with red lines. The human stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. The hunter raised a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. The alien woman moved faster than he could follow. She whispered words in her own tongue, and the café's walls bent like liquid. A chair shot forward, striking the hunter's weapon aside. The beast roared, its voice shaking the air. The human crouched lower, trembling, but something inside him began to shift. The warmth from the cup, the memory of her sorrow. It stirred his blood. The hunter lunged, but the woman caught its strike with her bare hand. Energy flared, burning, against her skin, yet she did not move away. She pushed back with strength that seemed impossible for her fragile frame. The café's lights flared brighter, symbols racing across the walls. The human felt the power vibrate through his chest. As if the café itself demanded him to rise, he stood shakily clutching the cup. The liquid inside glowed faintly again, though he had not touched it. A voice whispered in his mind. Not hers, not his, but something older. "Stand, do not." Heidegger said. He swallowed hard and took a step forward. The hunter turned, its red eyes narrowing at him. The alien woman gasped, "No, stay back." But the hunter was already moving toward the human. The man raised the cup without thinking, and the glow burst brighter. Light shot out, striking the hunter's chest. The creature staggered, roaring in pain, its armor cracking where the light touched. The human stared at his hands, shocked. He had no idea how he had done that. The woman's voice broke the silence. "It has chosen you," she whispered, awe and fear mixing in her tone. The hunter growled, staggering but not fallen. Behind the broken window, more shadows appeared, more hunters climbing closer. The human's courage cracked, fear rushing back. "There are too many," he said, voice trembling. "We can't fight them all." The woman turned sharply, her silver hair whipping across her face. "We are not fighting them here," she said. "We are escaping." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back of the café. The walls shifted, opening into a dark hallway that had not been there. Before, the air smelled of earth and old stone. The human stumbled as she pulled him inside. Behind them, the hunters roared, smashing through tables and chairs as they pursued. The hallway closed behind them with a hiss. The human gasped, chest heaving. "What is this place?" he asked. Her voice was calm but heavy. "A path only the café remembers," she said. "A path I hoped I would never use again." They ran through the twisting corridor, their footsteps echoing. The human felt the cup still glowing faintly in his grip. He wanted to throw it away, yet he knew it was the only reason he was still alive. Every breath burned in his chest, but he kept moving, pulled forward by her hand. At last they stopped, reaching a chamber deep underground. It glowed faintly with the same symbols as the café walls. The air was heavy, the silence thicker than... Before the woman turned to him, her eyes tired but unbroken. "They will come again," she said. "They will never stop, not while you hold the memory." The human's voice cracked. "What memory? What am I carrying?" Her answer was slow, her sorrow deeper than the chamber walls. "The memory of the one I lost," she whispered. "The one they killed, and the one they now see in you." The human's blood turned cold. He wanted to deny it, to shout that he was just himself, nothing more. But the cup in his hands still glowed, the warmth in his veins still pulsed, and deep inside he felt it. A shadow of another life, another man. And the hunters would never stop until that shadow was gone. The underground chamber was heavy with silence. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, breathing like living fireflies. The human leaned against the stone, his chest rising and falling fast. The glowing cup was still in his hand, its light weaker now, but still alive. He stared at it, as if the answers he wanted were hidden inside its faint glow. The alien woman stood across from him, her silver skin pale under the shifting light. Her breath was steady, but her eyes were sharp, watching the darkness behind them. "They will find us soon," she whispered. "This place hides us for a moment, but not forever." Her voice carried weight, not only fear but also certainty. The human shook his head, his voice rough. "I don't understand. I'm just a traveler. I never asked for any of this. Why? Won't they leave me alone?" She stepped closer, her eyes softening but still filled with sorrow. "Because to them, you are not a traveler. You are the shadow of the one they killed. You carry his echo, his face, his spirit, and they fear it. You cannot run from it, not anymore." Her words sank deep into him, but confusion clouded his mind. He wanted to argue, but before he could, the chamber shook. A distant roar echoed through the stone walls. The hunters were close again, their steps heavy, breaking through barriers with unstoppable force. The café's underground passage could only hold them off for so long. The human looked at her, panic rising. "What do we do? Where do we go?" Her face hardened. "There is one path left," she said. "A path the café itself hides. A path that bends space." He stared at her in disbelief. Bends space? What does that even mean? Her eyes narrowed. "It means we can escape, but the price is high." Before he could question her more, she touched the walls with both hands. The glowing symbols flared brighter, spreading like waves of light. The stone rippled, stretching, and a narrow corridor began to appear. The human's heart pounded, watching the impossible unfold before his eyes. It was not just a tunnel. It was a living passage, twisting with shadows and stars. It looked endless, yet it pulled him forward like a tide. He hesitated, stepping back. What if it swallows us? What if we don't come out? Her voice was calm, though sorrow touched every word. Better to risk the unknown than to fall into their hands. She turned her gaze to him, her eyes almost pleading. Do you trust me? The question cut through his fear. He remembered her whisper at the counter, her sorrow, her promise to protect him. He remembered the vision in the drink, the human face she had lost, the pain in her heart. Slowly, he nodded. Yes, I trust you. Her lips trembled, almost a smile, but not quite. Then follow me, she said, and stepped into the glowing corridor. The human took a deep breath and followed, clutching the cup as if it was his last anchor. The passage swallowed them. Darkness wrapped around them like water, but small lights glowed ahead, guiding their steps. Each step echoed, stretching longer than it should. The human felt strange pulls in his body, as if his bones were bending with the space itself. He stumbled, almost falling, but her hand caught his, holding him steady. Do not let go, she whispered, her voice carrying through the endless dark. The hunter's roars faded behind them, swallowed by the bending space. For the first time since the night began, silence felt safe. But inside his chest, the human felt the drink's warmth growing stronger. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, whispering voices, memories, and fragments he could not understand. Finally, the corridor opened into another chamber, brighter, calmer. The air smelled of rain. Though no water was there, symbols covered the floor in circles, each glowing with quiet rhythm. The woman stepped into the center and turned to face him. This is the heart of the café, she said softly, the last secret it hides. The human looked around, still shaken. Why show me this? Why bring me here? Her voice carried both strength and pain. Because now you are part of it. The café accepted you when you drank. Its life flows in your veins, and without you, it cannot survive. We are tied together now. His throat went dry. You mean, if I die, it dies? She nodded slowly. And if I die, so will you. The truth hit him like a blade. He staggered back, but the glowing cup kept pulling him forward. It was no longer just a drink. It was a chain, binding him to her in the café. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. The woman stepped closer, her sorrow clear. I did not choose this for you, she whispered. But the café did. And now you must choose, run and be hunted forever, or stay and fight with me. Her words were sharp, but her eyes carried a silent plea she had lost once before, and she would not survive losing again. The chamber trembled faintly. The hunter's shadows pressed at the edges of the passage behind them, faint but growing. Time was running out. The human's hand shook, his mind spinning. He had never wanted this fate, never wanted this battle. But when he looked into her eyes, filled with loss, pain, and fragile hope, he felt something shift inside him. He tightened his grip on the glowing cup. I will not run, he whispered, his voice steady at last. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, sorrow and relief mixing together. Then we will fight, she said. Behind them, the roar of the hunters grew louder, shaking the chamber. Walls, the café lights pulsed faster, as if readying itself for war. The escape plan was no longer just about running. It was about survival, and about standing together against the endless night. The chamber glowed with quiet light, yet the air was heavy with fear. The human stood close to the alien woman, his hand still clutching the cup. The hunter's roars echoed faintly behind the sealed passage, growing stronger each moment. But here, in the heart of the café, there was a fragile silence, a pause before the storm. The woman's silver skin shimmered faintly as she lowered herself to sit on the glowing floor. Her breath was steady, but Her shoulders carried years of sorrow. She looked at the human, her eyes filled with something deeper than fear, something older than the night itself. "You must know why I risk myself for you," she said softly. "Why I cannot let you die." Human's chest tightened. He knelt slowly across from her, the glow of the symbols painting shadows across his tired face. "Tell me," he whispered, "because I don't understand, and I need to." Her eyes closed for a moment, as if the truth was too heavy to carry. When she opened them again, her voice broke with emotion. "Long ago I loved a human," she said, each word trembling. "He came here just like you, lost, tired, looking for warmth. I gave him my care, and he gave me his heart. But the hunters found us, and I could not save him." Her hands trembled, her silver fingers clutching the fabric of her dress. "He died in my arms, and his memory burned into me like fire. Every day since I hear his voice, but only in silence, only in sorrow." The human swallowed hard, his own throat aching. The visions from the drink returned in fragments. A man's face, the woman's tears, the endless stars. Now he understood. It was not just memory she gave him. It was her wound, her grief. He whispered, "And now you see him in me." Her eyes met his, shimmering with unshed tears. "Yes," she breathed, "and that is why they hunt you. Because to them, you are his echo, and they fear the echo more than the man himself." The chamber pulsed faintly, the café listening to her words. The human gripped the cup tighter, feeling the warmth coil inside his veins. It was more than just a shield, it was a bond. Her sorrow had tied him to her, and her past had become his burden. He leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "I am not. Him I cannot replace him, but I will not leave you to suffer alone." Her lips trembled, not with words but with silence that carried more weight than speech. For a moment, they sat in that silence, sharing the pain of two lives stitched together by loss. Then the walls trembled again, louder this time. The hunters were forcing their way through the bending corridor. The woman rose to her feet, her sorrow turning into steel. "They will not stop," she said, her voice sharp again. "They will tear this place apart to reach you." Her eyes burned with sudden fire. "I will fight even if it kills me." The human stood quickly, shaking his head. "No," he said, his voice breaking. "You cannot die for me. I will not let your story end with sorrow again." He felt the drink's warmth rise inside him. Stronger, brighter. It filled his veins with courage that was not his, and yet it was. He raised the cup, watching it glow like a second heart. "If we fight together." The woman's gaze softened, but she did not argue. Instead, she stepped closer, placing her hand over his. The glow of the cup spread across their skin, joining them in one light. Her whisper was soft but unshakable. "Then let us carry our wounds as one and turn them into strength." The chamber's floor lit up with brighter symbols. Circles of light spun slowly, rising into the air like shields. The café responded to their bond, stronger now, that the Aiguar human had accepted it. The air hummed with energy, filling the chamber with both power and dread. The hunters' shadows appeared at the edge of the passage, their armor glowing with red lines. Their roars shook the chamber as they broke through. The last wall. The human's heart pounded, but this time he did not feel weak. This time he felt the woman's sorrow and his own fear turning into fire. The first hunter stepped inside, massive and armed. It raised its weapon, but before it could strike, the woman lifted her hand. The café's symbols flared, and the air itself bent, pushing the hunter back. The human followed instinct, raising the cup. Light burst forth, striking the hunter's chest, burning through its armor. The creature fell with a roar, but more rushed in behind it. The chamber filled with chaos, shadows, light, the roar of battle. The human and the woman stood side by side, each wound, each memory, each fear now shared. The hunters fought like demons, but the café fought with them. Walls bent, light pulsed, and the bond between human and alien grew stronger with each breath. Yet even in the heat of battle, the human saw her stumble. Her hand trembled, her strength faltered for a moment. He, caught her, his arms steady, his voice fierce. You are not alone. Not anymore. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, true tears fell, not of sorrow, but of release. Together they rose again, their wounds no longer chains, but fuel for the fire. The hunters roared. But the cafe roared louder. And in that underground heart, the battle became more than survival. It became a promise, a vow written in light and blood. The underground chamber shook with the roar of battle. The hunters forced their way through the shifting passage, their red armor glowing like fire in the dark. The cafe's walls bent and groaned, fighting to hold them back, but the weight of their numbers pressed harder with each strike. The human and the alien woman stood together, light from the glowing cup surrounding them like a fragile shield. For every hunter that fell, two more seemed to rise. The air was thick with the sound of weapons clashing against bending walls with roars that made the stone tremble. The woman's breath came heavy, her silver skin streaked with cuts, her strength slowly draining. Still she stood firm, her eyes sharp, her voice whispering to the cafe in words he could not understand. The walls pulsed with her voice, throwing bursts of light that slowed the hunters. But the cost was clear. The cafe was weakening, and so was she. The human's chest ached as he watched her fight. Each strike she made seemed to cut her soul as much as her body. He lifted the cup, its glow burning hotter, and light surged from it, knocking one of the hunters back into the shadows. The force rattled his arms, but he held on, teeth clenched. The warmth inside him grew, filling his veins with power and memory. Voices whispered in his mind again, echoes of the one she had lost, voices of sorrow and courage intertwined. The woman stumbled, her knees buckling, and he rushed to catch her. Her body trembled, her breath shallow. You must leave, she whispered, her voice weak but firm. You must run before they break us both. The human shook his head, his grip tight around her. No, he said fiercely. I will not leave you. Not now. Not ever. Her eyes widened, shimmering with fragile light. No one ever stayed, she whispered, almost like a confession. He lifted her hand, pressing it against the glowing cup. Then tonight I stay, he said, his voice steady even through the fear. The cup blazed brighter as if fed by their bond, its light spilling across the chamber walls. The hunters roared, charging together, their weapons raised. The cafe's symbols flared one last time, casting waves of blue light that slowed the beasts. But the woman's strength broke, her body collapsing into his arms. The cafe trembled violently, its lights flickering, its life force tied to hers. The human's heart raced, panic clawing at his chest. If she died, the cafe would die too, and he would be left with nothing but darkness. He held her close, his voice breaking. Stay with me, he whispered. Please, don't leave me too. Her lips parted, her voice faint. Do not let my story end again with silence, she breathed. Tears burned in his eyes, falling hot against her silver skin. He felt the drink's warmth surge, brighter than ever. The cup shook in his hands, its glow almost blinding. The hunters stormed closer, their red masks glowing, their steps heavy as thunder. But the human stood tall, lifting the cup high. The warmth inside him exploded outward, a flood of light filling the chamber. The hunters screamed, their armor cracking under the force. The cafe's walls pulsed in rhythm with the light, fighting back with one last roar. The human felt his body burning, as if the drink's power was tearing him apart. But he did not stop, not while she lay weak in his arms, not while the hunters threatened to take everything from her again. He let the light pour from him, stronger, brighter, until the chamber itself shook with the force. The hunters fell back, retreating into the darkness, their screams fading. The cafe walls sealed the passage behind them, closing like living stone. At last silence returned, heavy but alive. The human fell to his knees, the cup dimming in his hands. The woman lay against him, her eyes half closed, her breath shallow, but still there. He brushed her silver hair gently, whispering, "You're still here? You're still alive." Her lips curved faintly, a weak smile. Because you stayed, she whispered, her voice trembling but warm. He held her tighter, relief flooding his chest for the first time since the night began. The silence did not feel empty. It felt alive. The cafe's symbols glowed softly, no longer fierce but calm. It was alive too, though weak, tied to both of them. The human realized then that survival was not the end. The battle would come again. The hunters would return. But tonight, they had stood together, and together they had endured. He looked at her, his voice low but certain. I will not let them take you. I will not let your story end in sorrow. Her eyes shimmered, filled with fragile hope. Then we will fight again, she whispered, until the night itself grows tired of us. The cafe hummed softly as if agreeing. The human held her close, the cup still glowing faintly in his hand. The last stand was not the end, but only the beginning of a war they now shared. And in the silence that followed, wounds were no longer just pain, they were the promise of tomorrow. The cafe was quiet after the storm. The walls no longer shook. The lights no longer flared with violent energy. Only the faint glow of the symbols remained, steady like a heartbeat. The human sat on the floor, the alien woman resting weakly in his arms. Her silver skin was pale, her breath thin. But she was alive. And that was all that mattered to him. Outside, the night stretched on. The hunters had retreated into the shadows. But their absence was not peace, only a pause. He knew they would return, stronger and angrier. Yet in this moment, all he felt was the warmth of her presence, fragile but real. The cup glowed faintly in his hand, dim but steady, as if it too had survived the battle. The woman stirred slightly, her voice soft like wind. You should have left, she whispered. You could have run. You could have lived without this burden. The human shook his head, his voice firm though his body trembled. No, I could not, because I have seen your sorrow. I have felt your wound. To leave you would be the same as dying, only slower. Her eyes opened, shimmering with faint light. Tears welled in them, but this time they were not only of sorrow. You speak as if you are part of me now, she whispered. He brushed a strand of her silver hair gently from her face. I am, he said simply. Whether I chose it or not, the cafe tied us together, and I will not break that bond. She closed her eyes for a moment, relief softening her face. For so long she had carried her wound alone. For so long she had whispered her pain into silence. But now, here in his arms, the silence finally felt broken. The cafe hummed softly around them, as if it too was breathing easier. The human looked at the glowing walls, his voice low. This place is alive, isn't it? Not just walls and lights, but truly alive. The woman nodded faintly. It was born from me, from my sorrow, from my love, from the promise I could not keep. Every breath I take feeds it. Every memory I carry binds it. That is why, when I die, it dies with me. His chest tightened at her words. Then he lifted the cup, pressing it gently to her lips. Drink, he said, his voice steady. She hesitated. But he whispered again, please take it, let it heal you. Slowly she drank, and the glow spread through her body. Her breath grew steadier, her strength returned, her eyes shining brighter than before. She looked at him, wonder filling her gaze. You gave me back what I gave you, she said softly. He smiled faintly, though tears stung his eyes. You cared for me behind the counter when I was lost. Now it is my turn to care for you. The chamber glowed brighter, the cafe feeding on their shared strength. The wounds in the walls began to seal, the symbols pulsing with new light. The hunters' roars echoed faintly in the distance, but they sounded farther away now. For the first time, the cafe felt less like a prison and more like a home. A fragile home, but theirs. The woman leaned closer, her voice trembling but filled with warmth. Why do you stay? Why risk yourself for me? He answered without hesitation. Because this time I will not let the story end in silence, because this time I choose to stay. Her lips trembled, her eyes filling again with tears. Then you are not only his echo, she whispered. You are yourself, and that is enough. The cafe pulsed gently, as if agreeing with her words. The human looked at the dim corridors where the hunters had vanished. They will return, he said, his voice calm but steady. And when they do, we will be ready. She nodded, her sorrow now mixed with hope. For the first time, I believe we might survive. Together, they rose from the glowing floor. Her steps were weak at first, but he steadied her, holding her close. The cafe's light followed them as they moved, opening a path back toward the counter. When they stepped into the cafe once more, the familiar scent of spices filled the air. It was the same place where it had begun. The lonely human, the whisper behind the counter, the warm drink that had changed everything. Now, the counter was no longer just wood and stone. It was a place of memory, of sorrow, of new promise. The human set the cup gently on its surface, and the cafe glowed brighter in response. The woman stood beside him, her hand brushing against his. Her whisper was soft, almost like the first night. This time you stayed. He looked at her, his chest heavy but full of strength. And I will stay, he answered. As long as it takes, as long as you need me. The cafe pulsed warmly, alive with their vow. Outside, the night was still full of shadows, and the hunters would come again, but inside, behind the counter, there was a bond stronger than fear, a promise written not in sorrow but in hope, and in that promise they found something greater than survival. They found the beginning of a new story, one they would write together,